appointed the Batman?
We did. All of us who stood by and let scum take control of our city.
But this is a democracy, Harvey.
When their enemies were at the gates, the Romans would suspend democracy and appoint one man to protect the city. And it wasn't considered an honor, it was considered a public service.
Harvey, the last man that they appointed to protect the Republic was named Caesar, and he never gave up his power.
Okay, fine. You either die a hero, or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
I would like to thank Harvey Weinstein.
Harvey Weinstein, who believed in us and made this movie.
Harvey.
My friends at Miramax for making this film, especially Harvey.
Thank you, Harvey Weinstein.
I would like to thank Harvey Weinstein.
Thank you to Harvey.
Harvey, thank you for killing whoever you had to kill to get me up here today.
My agent, Kevin Uvain, and God, Harvey Weinstein.
Hollywood movie mogul Harvey Weinstein is on a leave of absence from his studio this morning after several women alleged he sexually harassed them. Actress Ashley Judd told the New York Times about an alleged incident in his hotel room nearly 20 years ago. She claimed he was in a bathrobe and asked to give her a massage or watch him take a shower. Judd told the Times, "I said no a lot of ways, a lot of times, and he always came back at me with some new ask." The Times reports Weinstein reached at least 8 settlements, each of up to $150,000, with women who alleged improper conduct.
Weinstein's lawyer tells CBS News, quote, "The New York Times published a story that is saturated with false and defamatory statements about Harvey Weinstein. We sent the Times the facts and evidence, but they ignored it and rushed to publish." His lawyer says he is preparing a lawsuit against the paper.
Weinstein said in an interview yesterday with the New York Post, quote, "I bear responsibility for my actions, but the reason I'm suing is because of the Times' inability to be honest with me and their reckless reporting." New York Times correspondent Jodi Kantor is a CBS News contributor. She spent 4 months investigating this story with her colleague Megan Twohey, and she joins us at the table. We'll get to Harvey
Now
Weinstein.
to the latest on Harvey Weinstein. The New York Times reporting allegations by numerous women who say the Hollywood mogul sexually harassed them. His alleged victims over nearly 3 decades include stars like Ashley Judd and Rose McGowan. Now Weinstein is threatening to sue the New York Times for defamation, and Lisa Bloom, who is defending Harvey Weinstein, is standing by. First, though, we have ABC's Lindsay Davis here with more on the story. Good morning to you, Lindsay.
Good morning, Amy. That lawsuit is reportedly for $50 million. The New York Times quotes Weinstein as saying, "I came of age in the 60s and 70s when all the rules about behavior in workplaces were different. That was the culture then." And now one of the most powerful men in Hollywood says he is taking a leave of absence to, quote, "conquer his demons."
He's the movie mogul behind some of Hollywood's biggest blockbusters.
Because I am so much crazier than you.
Keep your voice down.
An industry legend for so many A-list stars.
Harvey Weinstein, who believed in us and made this movie.
My friends at Miramax for making this film, especially Harvey.
He's politically well connected too, hosting a fundraiser for Hillary Clinton and hiring Malia Obama as an intern earlier this year. But now the New York Times is reporting bombshell allegations against Harvey Weinstein, describing several accusations of sexual harassment against the studio executive worth $200 million, and citing 2 anonymous company officials saying Weinstein reached at least 8 settlements with accusers. The alleged victims, as reported by the Times, are all in varying positions, from an assistant to a model to a movie star. Ashley Judd.
Somebody help me.
Judd tells the Times that in 1997, while filming Kiss the Girls, the then head of Miramax Studios invited her to a breakfast meeting at the luxurious Peninsula Hotel in Beverly Hills. Judd tells the paper that Weinstein requested she come to his room, where he appeared in a bathrobe, and asked if he could give her a massage or if she could watch him shower. She told the Times she recalled feeling panicky, trapped. "Women have been talking about Harvey amongst ourselves for a long time," said Judd, "and it's simply beyond time to have the conversation publicly." But now Weinstein is speaking out to the New York Post, saying he bears responsibility for his past behavior, but claims the Times article is reckless reporting. Judd, seen here at an Academy Awards party with Weinstein after the alleged incident, went on to act in 2 more movies produced by his studio, 2002's Frida and 2009's Crossing Over.
I am required to present it to you.
The Times also reports that a legal document the paper reviewed showed actress Rose McGowan reached a $100,000 settlement with Weinstein in 1997.
Oh, you want to play psycho killer?
As a result of an alleged episode in a hotel room at the Sundance Film Festival, although the document indicated the settlement was not at admission by Weinstein. McGowan, who declined to comment to the Times, tweeted after the article posted Thursday, "Women, fight on, and to the men out there, stand up. We need you as allies. #be brave." This 65-year-old father of 5, seen in this Daily Mail photo departing his New York City office as news broke, told the Post that he wants to earn the forgiveness of Judd and that his family stands by him. He's been married to fashion designer Georgina Chapman since 2007. The Weinstein Company head told ABC News in a statement that, "I appreciate the way I've behaved with colleagues in the past has caused a lot of pain, and I sincerely apologize for it. Though I'm trying to do better, I know I have a long way to go," adding that he is taking a leave of absence from work and is working with therapists.
Weinstein is now hitting back at the Times, claiming the explosive report is, quote, saturated with false and defamatory statements and vowing to file that lawsuit. He's now hired Hulk Hogan's lawyer, who won him a $140 million settlement against Gawker.
Well, film producer Harvey Weinstein has now been fired from the company he co-founded following numerous allegations of sexual harassment. The Weinstein Company's board of directors made that announcement tonight.
The board of directors of the Weinstein Company issuing a statement overnight saying, in light of new information about misconduct by Harvey Weinstein that has emerged in the past few days, his employment was terminated effective immediately, a dramatic turn for one of Hollywood's most powerful players. The Weinstein board said on Friday it had hired a law firm to investigate the allegations against Harvey Weinstein. Sunday's statement did not make clear whether that investigation is still ongoing. Harvey Weinstein had said on Friday, before he was fired, that he would take a leave of absence to, quote, deal with this issue head on. He was a big donor to Democrats, too, as well, and many have now announced, guys, that they will give those donations over to charity.
Wow. All right, Kate, thank you.
I'm joined now by Megyn Kelly as well. She's going to talk more about this on Megyn Kelly Today, and you're going to talk
about alleged sexual harassment by Hollywood mogul Harvey Weinstein. The latest bombshell allegations in the New York Times come from stars like Gwyneth Paltrow and Angelina Jolie, as well as other actresses.
Paltrow has told the Times she was harassed by Weinstein when she was 22 years old. She says that he suggested they go to a hotel bedroom for massages. Paltrow later told Brad Pitt, who was her boyfriend at the time, who then confronted Harvey Weinstein. In an email to the Times, Jolie said Weinstein made unwanted advances in a hotel room, and she, quote, chose never to work with Harvey again and warned others when they did.
Weinstein was fired Sunday by his company. 4 of 9 board members resigned as a result of the original revelations. New York Times correspondent Jodi Kantor is a CBS News contributor. She co-authored the article that broke this story. Jodi, good morning.
Good morning.
This has been incredible reporting. Tell me about how you got Gwyneth Paltrow and Angelina Jolie to reveal this abuse from a while ago.
They wanted to come forward in the wake of the first story we broke. They wanted to support other women. Gwyneth said to me, we need to send a message. This kind of behavior towards women ends now.
There are also reports in other places about things that go beyond simply harassment and threatening sexual violence. Is this just the tip of the iceberg we're seeing? Is there some sense that there are a lot of other things coming out in this story?
All the women on the set started talking about their own stories. And there wasn't one woman that didn't have a story. It was so prevalent. But there was a great sense of just camaraderie and women supporting each other that just felt so good and almost like a relief. And October 15th, I was in bed with my daughter, Bella, and I looked down at her and I had one of those mommy moments where I prayed to God that she wouldn't have to go through what I went through or what all of those strong women that shared their stories with me went through. And I sent out the tweet. It was probably, I don't know, maybe 9 p.m., not thinking anything of it, knowing that the numbers would come back large because I had an understanding of how big the problem was, but not expecting it to take off the way it did.
Two simple words with the powerful meaning. Today, your social media feed was flooded with stories of sexual harassment connected to the hashtag #MeToo.
Now to the Me Too movement growing this morning in the wake of the Harvey Weinstein scandal. Millions of women sharing their own stories online, saying sexual harassment and assault isn't just a problem for Hollywood.
That movement took off last weekend when Alyssa Milano highlighted it on Twitter, posting, "If you've been sexually harassed or assaulted, write Me Too," as a reply to this tweet. Now this morning, 1.5 million tweets and 13.5 million posts, comments, and reactions on Facebook and Twitter. Some of the top employment law firms in the country tell ABC News they're seeing a significant increase in inquiries related to sexual harassment. One firm says calls have tripled.
That's an epidemic.
The Me Too campaign was first created by Tarana Burke 10 years ago to aid sexual assault survivors in underprivileged communities.
This is not about me, it's about survivors. And it's about what survivors need to be healthy and
Sexual
whole.
assault and harassment survivors are sharing their stories online.
It happened to me too.
Me too.
It happened to me too.
And it happened to me too.
I posted, and I will say it right now out loud, me too.
Beyond the glamour and glitz of Tinseltown, this morning more women in Hollywood are coming forward with claims about the kind of men Molly Ringwald calls all the other Harvey Weinsteins.
No spinning it tonight. The king of cable news dethroned. Bill O'Reilly, the host of cable's most popular show for 16 years, out at Fox News in the wake of that growing sexual harassment scandal.
8 women have now apparently come forward saying longtime TV host Charlie Rose made unwanted sexual advances toward them. The Washington Post has a story.
Once America's favorite dad, Bill Cosby, accused by over 50 women of sexual assault.
Fox News megastar Megyn Kelly is reportedly claiming she was sexually harassed by her boss at Fox News Channel 10 years ago. New York Magazine reports that Kelly is saying that Fox News Channel CEO Roger Ailes made unwanted sexual advances when she was a young correspondent at Fox. At the Republican convention, we caught up with journalist Gabriel Sherman, who broke the story.
It means that Roger Ailes, the larger-than-life head of Fox News, his future is now in doubt. The Murdoch family that owns Fox News has given him an ultimatum that he needs to resign from the company by August 1st, or he would be fired for cause.
October 17th, Amazon Studios chief Roy Price resigns immediately following allegations that he sexually harassed a producer who worked with the studio.
Popular comedian Louis C.K. at the center of the latest sexual misconduct allegations, now confirming them in a statement saying, "I want to address the stories told to the New York Times by 5 women. These stories are true."
A video resurfaces of Ben Affleck groping an MTV host's breast on TRL in 2003. He publicly apologizes and promised to be part of the solution.
Former Mad Men writer Kater Gordon told the website The Information the show's creator, Matthew Weiner, sexually harassed her. She claims one night while working together 8 years ago, Weiner said she owed it to him to let him see her naked.
More fallout this morning for Mario Batali, a man known for cooking pasta to perfection, now in hot water himself, as the Washington Post details new accusations of unwanted touching and inappropriate behavior at a party in 2010.
Dr. Jeffrey Tambor announced today he is leaving the Amazon series Transparent following 2 accusations of sex harassment.
NBC morning news anchor Matt Lauer has been fired from the Today Show due to, quote, inappropriate sexual behavior in the workplace.
CBS Chairman and CEO Leslie Moonves, the top executive at America's most watched television network, has resigned tonight, bowing to pressure brought on by a widening sexual harassment scandal. CBS Corporation and National Amusement said Sunday night Moonves and CBS will donate $20 million to one or more organizations that support the Me Too movement and equality for women in the world.
Kevin Spacey has been one of the most praised actors in Hollywood, but this morning he is now facing a storm of criticism on social media and beyond.
This morning, Kevin Spacey in a drama of his own. The House of Cards star under fire following allegations of sexual misconduct.
Making their point in Washington, Chicago, Dallas, and in city after city in America and around the world. Today, the day after Donald Trump became their president, they chanted, "Pink Pussycats, mocking Trump for comments he's made about women, reinforced in as many ways they could think of. Hundreds of thousands of Americans enraged by the man voted into office by millions of other Americans. In Washington, the crowd was so big, plans to march near the White House had to be canceled by organizers, though they headed that way regardless. It was mayhem. Meanwhile, the demonstration on the streets of Washington raged on.
I felt like people are dancing on our graves. People in fancy dresses, black, of course, posing and living it up on the red carpet. And the black, stupid clothes that the stupid men wore. It's a lie. And I knew they were going to trot the activists out there for PR.
It was one of the most important nights of the Me Too movement. Hollywood's biggest stars wearing black at the Golden Globes to rail against the system that allegedly allowed sexual misconduct to fester for decades.
But organizers of the black dress protest say that the red carpet campaign is just part of their vision for change. Reese Witherspoon tells the New York Times, quote, "It really is a statement that women are deeply unified. We always have been, and we stand up for those who can't speak up." Witherspoon is among a group of women in Hollywood backing the Time's Up legal defense fund that's already raised more than $13 million for sexual assault victims. Reese Witherspoon also helped launch the special Time's Up pins on the Golden Globes red carpet. 500 pins have been created to help raise awareness about sexual assault. Now, joining me now is Noreen Flanagan. She's the editor-in-chief of Fashion Magazine to sort of unpack all this. Is this black dress campaign something that you as an industry insider could support?
I think initially when I heard about it, I also thought that it was perhaps a bit of a feeble protest. I think it's my own opinion that if you're going to make a protest, there has to be a personal sacrifice to it. And I don't think it's necessarily a personal sacrifice to have to wear black. But then when they announced the Time's Up campaign, I really had a change of heart. I could see that they were using fashion not to make kind of a superficial fashion statement, but to actually use fashion to make a statement about the solidarity that women and men are feeling at this moment.
Welcome back to a snowy Rockefeller Plaza. In the wake of the Me Too movement, some prominent women in Hollywood are joining forces now to say time's up.
That is the name of a new coalition formed to address sexual harassment issues in the entertainment industry and actually in workplaces nationwide. Actress America Ferrera was instrumental in the creation of this new campaign.
So I'm sorry, I just want to say to receive a letter on behalf of 700,000 women working in the fields, women who put food in our supermarkets on our tables, standing with us. It was such a moment of modeling what we need to be doing in our larger society. And it was such a signal to us that we couldn't do anything but respond, and not just with words, but with real action. And one of the things we decided to do in our response was seed and fund a new legal defense fund called the Time's Up Legal Defense Fund that will help men and women across all industries fight their sexual harassment cases with subsidized legal defense. And we have raised over $14 million. Wow. And in the last couple days, we have received over $1 million in small $5 donations. So it's incredible to see what's happening just with a simple message that time's up and we've got to do something about it.
In just a few days, this walkway will be covered in red. People in the bleachers will be able to watch nominees and presenters walk that red carpet, mostly dressed in black. They'll be doing that as a sign of solidarity in support of victims of sexual harassment and assault.
Dressing to dazzle is part of the glamour of awards season, but this year expect a more somber tone. Many women nominated for Golden Globes say they'll be wearing black.
I'm very excited to be a part of that and stand in solidarity with all of the women that are going to be at the Globes wearing black dresses.
Allison Janney is among many nominees taking part, along with Reese Witherspoon, Mary J. Blige, Saoirse Ronan, and Meryl Streep.
I definitely feel an energy around the Golden Globes this year.
Stylist Michaela Erlanger has not only worked with Streep, but also Oscar winners Lupita Nyong'o and Jennifer Hudson.
I wouldn't be surprised if, it was a sea of black on the red carpet, and I think it will be a very powerful moment.
The red carpet moment is part of a larger movement called Time's Up. For New Year's Day, by more than 300 industry professionals, it's already raised a legal defense fund of nearly $15 million to tackle sexual harassment and inequality, not just in Hollywood, but for women in all industries.
And the Oscar goes to And now I want to get some perspective. If I may be so honored to have all the female nominees in every category stand with me in this room tonight. The actors, Meryl, if you do it, everybody else will, come on. The filmmakers, the producers, the directors, the writers, the cinematographer, the composers, the songwriters, the designers. Come on. Ms. Boyman. Okay, look around, everybody. Look around, ladies and gentlemen, because we all have stories to tell and projects we need financed. Don't talk to us about it at the parties tonight. Invite us into your office in a couple days, or you can come to ours, whichever suits you best, and we'll tell you all about them. I have 2 words to leave with you tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Inclusion rider.
Yeah. Please explain your comment at the end, the 2 words, inclusion rider.
Right. I just found out about this last week. There has always been available to all everybody that does a negotiation on a film, an inclusion rider, which means that you can ask for and or demand at least 50% diversity in not only the casting but also the crew. And so the fact that I just learned that after 35 years of being in the film business, we're not going back. So the whole idea of women trending, no trending. African Americans trending, no trending. It changes now. And I think the inclusion rider will have something to do with that.
They tell me that I'm never gonna make it. They want me to do something that could make sense. They hate when I keep dreaming I'll be famous. But I don't give a fuck, I'ma keep chasing. I got all this potential that's deep inside of me, but they hate when you're successful cause they try to be. They sit there being judgmental because you're trying things, and they just want you to settle and do the right thing. So get a good job, don't slack off. Wake up every morning, make a good impression on your boss. Don't do anything that I wouldn't do, and when you're making money, make sure you...
Time magazine choosing the silence breakers of the Me Too movement as their Person of the Year.
Who are you to tell me how to live life? In these times it feels like nobody's right, yeah. So I'ma figure out what else we succeed, and then invest all of my time into that and proceed. I need whatever the hell could make me happy, and I don't think you have a clue what could that be. They tell me that I'm never gonna make it. They want me to do...
On free speech, on religious liberty, on the Second Amendment, is on each of our fundamental liberties. Virtually all of the major landmark cases were decided 5-4, that we're just 1 vote away from losing those precious liberties.
Monumental moment for the Supreme Court. Today we learned Justice Anthony Kennedy is retiring from the court. He hand-delivered his letter to President Trump. Nominated by President Reagan and serving 30 years on the court, he was often the crucial swing vote. A conservative, but he also sided with the liberal justices at times on issues including abortion and gay rights. He is now stepping down, and President Trump, right there in the middle, will now get the chance to shape this court for at least a generation.
Tonight, it is my honor and privilege to announce that I will nominate Judge Brett Kavanaugh to the United States Supreme Court.
Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, who joins us from Capitol Hill for an interview you'll see first on CBS this morning. Senator Schumer, good morning.
Good morning.
We know that if Brett Kavanaugh is confirmed, this will shift the balance of power on the Supreme Court for decades to come. Republicans control the majority. Is there anything you can do to stop this nomination?
Yes. Well, President Trump, with the nomination of Judge Kavanaugh, has fulfilled or is fulfilling 2 of his campaign promises. First, to undo women's reproductive freedom. Second, to undo ACA. And so I will oppose him with everything I've got.
Other breaking news that's also emerging right now, this time out of Washington. A woman says the president's U.S. Supreme Court nominee, Brett Kavanaugh, assaulted her when she and Kavanaugh were both in high school. CNN's Jessica Schneider is joining us right now. So, Jessica, first of all, what do we know about this woman and what she says about Kavanaugh, what he allegedly did?
Yeah, Wolf, you know, a vehement denial from Brett Kavanaugh, and it all revolves around this decades-old assault allegation. So it comes from a woman who knew Brett Kavanaugh in high school in the 1980s, and her allegations are coming to light now because she recently wrote a letter to her congresswoman in California. That letter was then passed on to the top Democrat on the Senate Judiciary Committee, Dianne Feinstein. So here's what was detailed in the letter. This is according to a source familiar with this letter. So it was in the early 1980s when this woman attended a party in Maryland with Brett Kavanaugh and other high schoolers. She says Kavanaugh physically pushed her into a bedroom at that party, and along with another male, Kavanaugh allegedly locked the door and played loud music, which the accuser says precluded her from being heard when she yelled for help. So this woman says both of these men were drunk, and she says Kavanaugh allegedly tried to take off her clothes and also allegedly had his hand over her mouth. And at one point, because of this, the accuser says she feared for her life, but she was finally able to leave the room, and she eventually left the party.
Members of the committee, my name is Christine Blasey Ford. I am a professor of psychology at Palo Alto University and a research psychologist at the Stanford University School of Medicine. I won't detail my educational background since it has already been summarized. I have been married to Russell Ford since 2002, and we have 2 children. I am here today not because I want to be. I am terrified. I am here because I believe it is my civic duty to tell you what happened to me while Brett Kavanaugh and I were in high school. I have described the events publicly before. I summarized them in my letter to Ranking Member Feinstein and again in a letter to Chairman Grassley. I understand and appreciate the importance of your hearing from me directly about what happened to me and the impact that it has had on my life and on my family.
President Trump's Supreme Court nominee had already categorically and unequivocally denied the allegation, saying he did not do this back in high school or at any time. And the White House says it is standing with Judge Kavanaugh's denial.
Why on earth over the past 4 to 6 weeks hasn't it been discussed?
They've had this stuff for 3 months. If they were serious about it, they should have told us about it.
Before the Washington Post story was published, Republicans on the Senate Judiciary Committee were critical of ranking Democrat Dianne Feinstein, who was aware of the allegation but did not disclose it to the wider committee, instead sharing it with the FBI. Feinstein originally said she was respecting Ford's desire to stay anonymous. But with today's decision to come forward, Feinstein says she wants the FBI to conduct an investigation before any committee vote.
Tonight there are more allegations, consistent in many ways with the allegations we have already heard. Leading Democrats are calling these new claims powerful, compelling, and highly credible. They are all but daring Republicans to question the new accusers. The victims, they say, must be believed. Here's a selection of the charges. Oh, just kidding. That's a scene from The Crucible, which you'll remember is the Arthur Miller play about the Salem witch trials. Miller wrote the Crucible to understand this reasoning. Coons is a Democrat from Delaware and a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee. He's been making the same case about Brett Kavanaugh in public recently. Watch him explain it.
It is Judge Kavanaugh who is seeking a lifetime appointment to the Supreme Court and who I think now bears the burden of disproving these allegations rather than Dr. Ford and Ms. Ramirez.
So even those of you who are absolutely dead certain that Brett Kavanaugh is guilty as hell because you saw it on CNN would have to admit that this does put him in a tough spot. The rest of us assume the Constitution guarantees us the presumption of innocence when we're accused. Brett Kavanaugh no longer has that protection. It's up to him to clear his own name. He can either figure out how to prove that Christine Ford's foggy 36-year-old memories are wrong, or his daughters can grow up learning about how their dad is a sex offender. That's his choice. So what does he do next? How do you disprove an accuser who can't even tell you when or where you supposedly committed the crime? Well, the FBI, of course. Democrats are demanding that Kavanaugh call down yet another FBI investigation on himself. Yes, he has submitted to 6 federal background checks already, but Democrats want another. That's the only way he can show he is innocent of these charges.
Capitol Police say they arrested 101 demonstrators on Friday. Dozens were taken into custody in the Senate office buildings. 16 men were arrested when they blocked the street outside the Supreme Court. Meanwhile, protesters gathered outside the Portland, Maine offices of Senator Susan Collins. On a nearby building, someone hoisted a Me Too banner beneath the American flag.
It's also personal for actress Alyssa Milano.
I am a survivor of sexual assault.
All right, the country is reacting. This is going to be a moment. Protests are erupting across the country. In the halls of the Capitol today, one person who felt compelled to share her story is actress and activist Alyssa Milano. Now, she was last Thursday, she was present when Judge Kavanaugh and Dr. Ford were testifying. She joins us now. Thank you for doing so. I appreciate it.
And they questioned him over and over again if he would agree to an FBI investigation, and he said no. And the other thing that I want to point out is if these women, all three of them, Julie Swetnick as well, if they were all lying, why is he not, maybe threatening with a claim of defamation, which we all know is, page 1 from the Trump rule book? Why is he not coming out and saying, you know what, I'm going to sue these people for saying this because I'm falsely being accused? There's none of that going on right now.
Fair point.
And women
of course, he may see the reward and satisfaction as getting the seat on the bench. Let me ask you a couple more things while I have you. One's about politics.
Please.
Macro, one's micro. On the micro level, you are a fan of Bill Clinton, and he is somebody who the right is pointing to now as, hey, just because they're ugly allegations doesn't mean the whole man's life should be based on it, especially when you can't prove them. Look at Bill Clinton. He was accused of a lot of ugly things. Some of it he had to admit. And yet people were fine with him and saying you have to judge him by more than him at his worst. Should Kavanaugh get the same benefit of the doubt?
No, and I don't think Bill Clinton should have gotten that benefit of the doubt in hindsight. Really? I think that as a nation, we were in a different time. I think that women were continually being silenced. And I think we gave him the benefit of the doubt, and we probably should have investigated the allegations against him as well. And I do believe that. This is not about partisan politics to me. This is about humanity. And we have to, even though this process is so uncomfortable for everyone, we really have to look at it, look at where we want to be, who we want to be as a nation, and really examine this in a non-political way, but just in a human way. I think it's vital that we get past this and get to the result, which is something that we're all looking for, which is, a just world with equality for women. And I think that every time a woman comes forward and a man can just write an op-ed, which in my view was actually an op-ed directed to Senator Flake in particular, because he's the one on the fence, and a woman is not given that same opportunity. We're saying to this man, what you say and your words mean more than what this woman is saying.
Are you aware that at 9:23 on the night of July the 9th, the day you were nominated to the Supreme Court by President Trump, Senator Schumer said, 23 minutes after your nomination, I will oppose Judge Kavanaugh's nomination with everything I have. I have a bipartisan, and I hope a bipartisan majority will do the same. The stakes are simply too high for anything less. Well, if you weren't aware of it, you are now. Did you meet with Senator Dianne Feinstein on August 20th?
I did meet with Senator Feinstein.
Did you know that her staff had already recommended a lawyer to Dr. Ford?
I did not know that.
Did you know that her and her staff had this allegations for over 20 days?
I did not know that at the time.
If you wanted an FBI investigation, you could have come to us. What you want to do is destroy this guy's life, hold this seat open, and hope you win in 2020. You've said that, not me. You've got nothing to apologize for. When you see Sotomayor and Kagan, tell them that Lindsay said hello, because I voted for them. I would never do to them what you've done to this guy. This is the most unethical sham since I've been in politics. And if you really wanted to know the truth, you sure as hell wouldn't have done what you've done to this guy.
The results are in from the FBI report on Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh and recent allegations of sexual assault and misconduct. Now, a handful of senators have to decide. Congressional correspondent Lisa Desjardins begins our coverage.
Outside the Supreme Court, some 3,000 protesters demanded the Kavanaugh nomination be rejected.
We'll take a look at the report and study it through.
Across the street, inside the Capitol, senators trooped to a secure room to read the FBI's report on the allegations against Brett Kavanaugh. All eyes were on key voters like Arizona Republican Jeff Flake, who helped force the reopening of the FBI probe.
Now we're in the process of reviewing it, but thus far we've seen no new credible corroboration, at all.
Another closely watched vote, Susan Collins of Maine. She said the new investigation appeared very thorough. For his part, President Trump tweeted that the allegations against Kavanaugh were totally uncorroborated. But Democrats argued the report resolved nothing. Dianne Feinstein is the top Democrat on the Senate Judiciary Committee.
The most notable part of this report is what's not in it. It looks to be a product of an incomplete investigation that was limited, perhaps by the White House.
Lawyers for Christine Blasey Ford, who's accused Kavanaugh of sexually assaulting her in high school, complained she and other witnesses were never interviewed. In a statement, they too blamed the president, saying those directing the FBI investigation were not interested in seeking the truth.
Mr. President, did you put any limits on the FBI investigation?
Mr. Trump ignored shouted questions about the probe as he left the White House on a political trip, but Press Secretary Sarah Sanders insisted the White House did not micromanage the process.
We accommodated all of the Senate's requests. The president was very clear about that and allowed the FBI to make those decisions and interview who they thought they needed to do so.
Democrats also argued there's not enough time for all senators to view the documents before a key procedural vote tomorrow. Virginia Senator Tim Kaine.
There is now a report, one copy. They're letting senators come in for hour-long blocks. Guess what? There's not 100 hours between when they made it available at 8 a.m. and when they want to do the vote. So they don't want 100 senators to read it. I'm not allowed to discuss it. The public can't see it. It's a complete sham.
But one previously undecided Democrat, North Dakota's Heidi Heitkamp, announced she will vote against confirming Kavanaugh. And pressure mounted on others, supporters of Kavanaugh showed up at the office of Alaska Senator Lisa Murkowski, who remains undecided.
And Lisa joins me now, along with White House correspondent Yamiche Alcindor. So, Lisa, what do we know about this report? What are senators saying? And is it changing any votes?
We know the supplemental report itself was something like 50 pages or so, and it included interviews with at least 9 people, and apparently the FBI reached out to at least a 10th person who may not have spoken to them. Senators are not supposed to speak about it, but I know Senator Kennedy told me that the whole Kavanaugh file is now about, I'm going to show the camera, about this big, is what he said. And what happened then behind those closed doors, you heard Senator Kaine reference this, senators had to split up the supplemental interviews and pass them around one by one. At one point, they had staff reading out loud the entire supplemental report. I think in the end, though, I did not hear any senator indicate that what they found in today's report is something substantially new. That is good news for Republicans who support Mr. Kavanaugh, but of course Democrats are complaining that this report was stacked in that direction from the get-go. That's their feeling.
On this vote, the ayes are 50, the nays are 48. The nomination of Brett M. Kavanaugh of Maryland to be an Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States is confirmed.
Protests against newly confirmed Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh were held in several major cities over the weekend. Thousands demonstrated in places like Seattle, Denver, right here in New York, and Washington, D.C. Judge Kavanaugh, as you know, was confirmed after he strongly denied allegations of sexual assault. Now, this comes 1 year after New York Times investigative reporter, that's Jodi Kantor, co-wrote the very first story revealing sexual assault allegations against Harvey Weinstein. This report fueled the Me Too movement, and the New York Times won a Pulitzer Prize for its reporting. Over the weekend, Kantor co-wrote in the Times, "We have only one firm prediction. This discussion over harassment and assault has no end in sight." Jodi Kantor is also, by the way, we're happy about this, a CBS News contributor, so we always like you, Jodi, when you come to the table. Let's start with Judge Kavanaugh, because I think most people don't think of the Me Too movement as a political issue. It seemed it was right or wrong, men and women. Now it seems to have become a political issue. Has it? Or I'm asking the question, has it become a political issue?
Well, these issues are inherently political, but also there is a special quality, I think, to the political stories over time, not just recently, about sexual misconduct. Bill Clinton, Clarence Thomas, now Brett Kavanaugh, President Trump. These take on all of the partisan anger, all of our worry about the future of the country. In some ways, they are the most important stories because they're about the presidency and the Supreme Court, but they're also the hardest because they're about so much more than just the sexual misconduct.
Partisan lines, though.
Well, that's the frustratingly predictable thing. What felt special in many ways about the Me Too movement in the last year, about the Weinstein story, the O'Reilly story, et cetera, is that they did not split along partisan lines. The message was, this is a problem everywhere, no matter who you are, no matter what you believe politically, this is all something we need to confront together as a society. Now it feels a little bit with Kavanaugh like that togetherness is splitting and falling apart.
Well, if you learned that 20 million Americans had been victims of a crime, you would consider that a public safety crisis.
And if the emotional and psychological effects of those crimes meant that 20 million Americans needed long-term professional care, you would consider that a public health crisis.
Well, we have such a crisis, and it's been hiding in plain sight for far too long.
Sexual assault.
America suffers from a cultural undercurrent that permits and protects the worst instincts and behaviors of misogynists and sexual predators, and our public response has been totally unacceptable.
And those who profit the most from the status quo would rather see us bicker about how best to protect those committing these crimes than standing with survivors.
We need a response that addresses the traumatic, lifelong effects,
physical and emotional,
that have left millions of Americans struggling.
If 20 million people caught a preventable disease, we would treat it as an epidemic.
We would mobilize local, state, and federal resources to treat the symptoms and address the root cause to prevent it from spreading further.
Why should sexual assault be any different?
Here are some steps we should immediately take.
1, listen to survivors and their advocates. Showing that we believe is crucial to helping others come forward.
Tara, thank you so much for being here. So there comes a day at some point that spring of 1993.
Correct.
Where you say Senator Biden and you had an experience in a hallway in one of the Capitol buildings. Can you describe what happened that day?
Yes, this was during that time where I was kind of frozen out, so I was kind of surprised. But Mary Ann came rushing in with this bag, like a duffel bag or gym bag, she called it, and said, hurry, the senator's already on his way. Just follow him and try to catch him before the Capitol and give him this. He wants his bag. I remember going down the Russell Building floors, and so I don't know if I was in the first floor or the basement, but there's corridors that lead to the Capitol and that kind of thing, and I was trying to catch up with him. And
this would have been on a weekday?
Yes, and I remember my heels, my legs hurting a little, and there was just from walking really fast. I remember things like that. And then I saw him at a distance. He was talking to someone, and they walked away the other direction. And then he greeted me. He remembered my name. And then I said, here you go, Senator. I handed him the bag. And it happened very quickly. I remember being pushed up against the wall and thinking the first thought I had was, where's the bag? which is an absurd thought, but that's what I thought was, where's the bag? Yeah, because I was handing it to him. And he had his hands underneath my clothes, and it happened all at once. So he had one hand underneath my shirt, and the other hand I had a skirt on, and he like went down my skirt and then went up. And I remember I was up almost on my tippy toes. And when he went inside the skirt, he was talking to me at the same time, and he was leaning into me, and I pulled this way away from his head, I remember. And so he was kissing my neck area, and he whispered, "Did I want to go somewhere else?" in a low voice. He said some other things. I can't remember everything he said. But he said something vulgar. And
may I ask what?
He said, "I want to fuck you." And he said it low, and I was pushing away. And I remember my knee hurting because our knees, he had opened my legs with his knee, and our knees caps clashed. So I felt like this sharp pain. His fingers were inside of my private area, my vagina, and it wasn't, there was no small talk, there was no like precept, it was just sudden, and it was happening like that. And he was saying that to me, saying those things to me, and I was pulling away. And then he pulled back immediately when he could see I wasn't complying. I was obviously just tensed up and frozen and not kissing him back and not going with him. And he pulled back and he looked at me and he said, "Come on, man, I heard you liked me." And when he said that, it was either I heard or I thought, but I remember hearing heard. When he said that, I immediately started thinking what I did, like how I brought this on. Like, did I say something to somebody? Did I give an impression? I was just, my mind was racing. And in that moment, I knew this was really bad. I knew it was more than just like the assault. It was really bad. He was then angry, right? And I could feel, it wasn't like yelling angry, but like that hostility build. And he pulled back and he was just looking at me directly. And he said, he pointed his finger at me and he said, "You're nothing to me. You're nothing." And I think that's the hardest thing. And I know people talk about the assault, but his words, those words stayed with me my whole life.
The presumptive Democratic nominee, Joe Biden, is expected to respond this morning to an allegation of sexual assault stemming from the early 1990s. His accuser says that Joe Biden assaulted her when she worked for his U.S. Senate office. Senior investigative correspondent Catherine Herridge is in Washington with more on this story.
To the allegation made against you by Tara Reade. So the former Senate aide accuses you of sexual assault. And please, to our viewers, please excuse the graphic nature of this, but I want to make sure that there is no question as to what we're talking about. She says in 1993, Mr. Vice President, that you pinned her against the wall and reached under her clothing and penetrated her with your fingers. Would you please go on the record with the American people? Did you sexually assault Tara Reade?
No, it is not true. I'm saying unequivocally, it never happened. And it didn't. It never happened.
The story of why now is actually incredibly telling. It says everything about how our elite institutions routinely cover for powerful men. It says everything about why so many women don't come forward at all. Because according to Tara and according to Ryan Grimm's reporting, Tara has been trying to come forward for months. Tara initially came forward in a limited fashion after Lucy Flores wrote an op-ed claiming that Joe Biden made her deeply uncomfortable at an event when he sniffed her hair and kissed the back of her head. Now, naturally, Tara was attacked and her character smeared, which gave her justifiable pause about sharing the full nature of her allegations. But she did decide to persist anyway and tell her full story, including her allegation of sexual assault. And so she did something very logical. She took it to the organization that was supposed to be set up to assist cases exactly like hers, Time's Up. Now, Time's Up Legal Defense Fund says on their website, this fund helps workers connect with lawyers and bring cases of workplace sexual harassment and related retaliation, regardless of industry, rank, or role. But somehow, that blanket statement included an unstated loophole that Tara's claim fell right through. According to Tara, and again according to Ryan's reporting, after initial interest, Time's Up walked away, claiming that taking on a claim against a candidate for office could jeopardize their nonprofit status. An incredibly conservative reading of the law that was contradicted by other lawyers and would mean that Time's Up is effectively giving a free pass to every powerful man who happens to also be a candidate for office. Oh, and there's one more thing that you should probably know. Time's Up's PR is handled by SKD Knickerbocker, which happens to be run by Joe Biden's campaign manager, Anita Dunn. You see, there's a powerful club here in this town, and you're not in it, and neither is Tara.
I endorsed Joe Biden.
Okay, good.
And there have been accusations against Joe about a sexual assault.
Right, and people were saying, how can you do that? Because
so I was, I have not publicly said anything about this. If you remember, it kind of took me a long time to publicly say anything about Harvey as well, because I believe that even though we should believe women, and that is an important thing, and what that statement really means is, like, you know, for so long the go-to has been not to believe them. So really, we have to sort of societally change that mindset to believing women. But that does not mean at the expense of not, giving men their due process and investigating.
Like that.
Right. I did my work, and I spoke to Time's Up, and I just don't feel comfortable throwing away a decent man that I've known for 15 years.
Yep.
In this time of complete chaos, without there being a thorough investigation.
Yeah.
I'm sure that mainstream media would be jumping all over this as well if they
weren't in a pandemic. If there was more credible, if there was evidence
if they found more evidence or
Tara says she tried to get her story out in other ways too. She wrote to Elizabeth Warren's office and Kamala Harris as well. She heard nothing back from Kamala and got a standard form letter back from Warren. Two women who, of course, heavily ran on their gender and what their election would represent for women. And then there's the media. Tara wasn't exactly hard to find. After Ryan's article and Katie's interview, I reached out to her separately on Twitter. I heard back within minutes. I'll be honest, I didn't want Rising to be the first on-camera interview for Tara, and I know from speaking with Katie that she didn't want to be the first podcast interview with Tara. Obviously, Katie and I are both seen as friendly to Bernie, which means in the mainstream world that we can't be trusted. I thought Tara deserved a full vetting and a fair hearing from a mainstream outlet. But as I reached out to mainstream folks that I know to see if they were interested in breaking this bombshell story, I heard back crickets. Nothing. No one seemed to want to touch it. Tara says she too had tried to get a hearing from mainstream journalists, only to come up empty. Now ask yourself, if a claim like this had been made against Bernie Sanders or even Donald Trump or another media villain like Edward Snowden, do you think that the accuser would have had any trouble getting press? Do you think it would fall to independent and alternative news to break the story if a woman who worked with Bernie in the 90s made a credible claim of sexual assault? Do you think CNN and MSNBC would bury their heads in the sand? Every reporter in this town would be breaking down their door to be the first to tell that story. Coverage would be wall to wall.
Let's bring in Linda Lacoste, the former neighbor of Tara Reade, who's accused Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden of sexual assault. Tara Reade accused him in 1993. We just played the clip of Tara describing what happened. Linda Lacoste came forward just recently in the Business Insider piece and has corroborated Tara Reade's account. Linda, this is your first time speaking on television about this. Can you tell us what happened in the mid-1990s? How did you know Tara? And then tell us what she told you and why you're coming forward today.
Well, Tara was my next door neighbor. I moved into the apartment right next to her. And we became close at that time. And she told me about it when we were having a conversation. And so, as Rich put forth in the article in the Business Insider, I was having a moment outside. I was outside and I had just received some papers and I was upset about them, and she came over and we were talking about violence, because I had experienced violence myself. And she started telling me about Joe Biden and what he had done. And basically she told me that he put her up against a wall, and he put his hand up her skirt, and he put his fingers inside her. And she was very distraught, and she was very upset, and she was crying. And that's how that conversation happened. We were just sitting on my front stoop in front of my apartment.
And what year was this that you had that conversation?
Well, it was either 1994 or very early, 1995 or early 1996.
Into context, Tara has said 3 things essentially. She said that she told her brother at the time, her brother confirmed. She said she told her friend at the time, the friend confirmed. She said that she told her mom at the time, mom has passed away, but that mom had called into Larry King Live at the time. That's confirmed. Now look, that doesn't say definitively anything. No. And we're never gonna have proof that says definitively anything. But also remember, and this is part of why this is such a big deal, when Tara's mom calls in to Larry King Live, and actually we have that sound, so let's go ahead and play. Let's go ahead and play the call.
Yes, hello. I'm wondering what a staffer would do besides go to the press in Washington. My daughter has just left there after working for a prominent senator and could not get through with her problems at all. And the only thing she could have done was go to the press, and she chose not to do it out of respect for him.
Okay, so on the one hand, she doesn't say specifically what the allegations are. It could have been, Tara originally talked about harassment, then she told the complete story in her view about assault as well. Not clear exactly what she's talking about, but part of why this is so significant, regardless of whether she's referring to harassment or assault, is because the Biden team has come out so hard in saying nothing ever happened, no one ever brought a concern to us, not Tara, not anyone ever brought a concern to us. This certainly seems to undermine that case, which is kind of hard to believe anyway, just given what we know publicly available about Joe Biden's behavior towards women.
Right, and I think that is you could say, hey, it was a misunderstanding. I mean, there was a misunderstanding about words exchange, or this is vindictive, or I remember something, but it wasn't this. These are all very reasonable explanations.
Yeah, I'm sorry if you felt that way.
I'm sorry if you felt, and I think that that's certainly something that, look, I think it would be protested obviously by her, but it would at least make sense. But whenever you start off from a position of that nothing ever happened, that there's no evidence.
Not only did it never happen, no one ever raised one concern with you over the course of all your time in the Senate.
And so when that is the starting place, then all you have to do is prove that that is incorrect. And that's essentially what Ryan has at least presented decent evidence at this point, that there has something occurred in which somebody felt uncomfortable and were called hearing about it. And I want to say this again, that was not the case with Christine Blasey Ford. There's zero evidence that her and Brett Kavanaugh were ever at their own party, and the person she says she was with doesn't remember the party and says it didn't happen.
So we've made this comparison before, but you really can't make it enough because it's just such a striking contrast. It was just a year and a half ago that Washington was completely convulsed, overturned by the Brett Kavanaugh confirmation battle. For more than a month, everything in Washington revolved around the spectacular allegations against Kavanaugh from a woman called Christine Blasey Ford. Those allegations had very few details accompanying. There was no proof they were true. In fact, there was ample evidence that they weren't, but it didn't matter. Democrats set a very clear standard at the time. They believe women and the allegations they make always.
Not only do women like Dr. Ford, who bravely comes forward, need to be heard, but they need to be believed. Guess who's perpetuating all of these kinds of actions? It's the men in this country. And I just want to say to the men in this country, just shut up and step up. Do the right thing for a change.
Let me just say right at the outset, I believe
Dr. Ford, I believe the survivor here.
Do you believe her story?
Well, I can tell you it really does have a ring of truth to it.
I believe her. Many, many, many Americans believe her. Many, many women in America who have been taken advantage of certainly believe her.
I believe her because she's telling the truth. Judge Kavanaugh has not asked to have the FBI review these claims. Is that the reaction of an innocent person? It is not.
Well, it was unanimous in the Democratic Party. They believe all women, and they believe Christine Blasey Ford because she is a woman. And of course, if the Democratic Party takes a view, if the word goes down, all the troops have to mouth the party line, you can be certain the media are repeating the same words. And in fact, they did. Kavanaugh, they said, was likely a serial rapist, and anyone who defended him was an enabler of a rapist.
I've never heard of a guy who's a one-time rapist. I've never heard of a guy who's a one-time sexual assaulter. I grew up with guys like this. He's from around this area, right? He's the fifth guy in a gang rape.
Maybe this country is a lot more racist and sexist than we thought.
I'm glad we have mostly women on tonight. I think young women have experienced this kind of thing with guys who have been drinking. I think they know this guy got, to say out of hand is ridiculous, worse than out of hand.
3 women came forward and said under oath in various ways that Brett Kavanaugh sexually assaulted them. And they were told, we don't believe you. That's the legacy of this hearing.
These white men, old, by the way, are not protecting women. They're protecting a man who is probably guilty.
It's those old white men. They're the worst. And by the way, there was Chris Matthews very upset about sexual harassment. He won't put up with that, won't tolerate it, ever. Well, now suddenly a very similar case has emerged. Tara Reid says Joe Biden sexually assaulted her in the early 1990s. The specifics are pretty overwhelming. We don't know if they're true. They're unproven. But so far, they seem to have a lot more supporting evidence than the charges against Brett Kavanaugh did. But the case is being handled very differently. The media are, for the most part, ignoring the story. Tara Reid doesn't have 2 front doors, so she can't be credible, apparently. Democrats aren't simply ignoring the story. They're proudly endorsing Joe Biden anyway. They don't care what women say. This was Nancy Pelosi earlier today.
An investigation on Justice Kavanaugh when a very similar allegation came out on him.
Well, let me just say, I respect your question, and I don't need a lecture or a speech.
We're here to show our respect for all women who have a case, who have it respected, for due process, to investigate, to find the truth, not fear it.
Here's the thing. I have complete respect for the whole Me Too movement. I have 4 daughters and 1 son. And there's a lot of excitement around the idea that women will be heard and be listened to.
But what's happening here has lifetime impacts. The crimes themselves, the allegations that have been made are about offenses that have a lifetime impact.
There is also due process. And the fact that Joe Biden is Joe Biden.
There's an allegation made against a person. An allegation, as I said before, that has lifetime impact on a person to be violated in that way by a person who wants a lifetime appointment to the Supreme Court.
There's been statements from his campaign, or not his campaign, but his former employees who ran his offices and the rest, that there was never any record of this.
Instead of asking questions, the Republican leadership fears the truth.
There was never any record, and that nobody ever came forward, or nobody...
Really? They're so afraid of the truth, and they're so afraid of a woman, Dr. Christine Blasey Ford, for the truth that she will tell.
I am so proud. The happiest day for me this week was to support Joe Biden for President of the United States.
I joined Leader Schumer in calling for Judge Kavanaugh to withdraw his name from consideration.
He's a person of great integrity, a great concern for the American people.
The Judiciary Committee and the Senate decide to go forward. They have to know that they are having a demoralizing impact and a chilling effect on the entire movement of courageous women who are telling their stories and demanding justice.
He authored the Violence Against Women Act when he was the chair of the Judiciary Committee in the 90s.
So there are two equities to be weighed. One equity is the integrity of the Supreme Court. The other equity to be weighed is the respect that we have for women when they come forward.
Please welcome to the stage President and CEO of the International Academy of Television Arts and Sciences, Bruce Paisner.
Welcome to the International Emmys. It is now my distinct pleasure to present the 2020 International Emmy Founders Award to Governor Andrew Cuomo, with a little help from some of my fellow New Yorkers.
To my governor, the governor of Empire State, Andrew Cuomo.
Congratulations, Andrew, on your much-deserved Founders Award.
How in the world do you cover that?
Well, I have to admit that I am a fan of Andrew Cuomo and wish very much that he were president of the United States now, running a national battle against this virus. If I were
isn't he? Isn't he actually? In a way, he is.
The president.
He is president.
Well, he talks to us. He talks to the people.
My celebrity crush right now, Governor Cuomo.
I heard, though, that you had a crush on our boyfriend, Andrew Cuomo.
Dude, everyone does, right? I think he's fantastic.
It's okay. These feelings are perfectly natural. Many Americans experience moments of being at least Andrew curious, if not fully CuomoSexual.
Trevor, you call yourself a CuomoSexual, and I agree with you. I feel like I'm a CuomoSexual too.
Some people are calling themselves CuomoSexuals.
And there's a group of women who came out and they said, we're falling in love with Cuomo.
I'm ready for my boyfriend to come on TV. Ooh, we wake up together every single morning. Me and Andrew Cuomo. Ooh, there he is.
New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, who is already facing criticism for part of his response to the pandemic, faces new trouble this morning over detailed allegations of inappropriate behavior in the workplace. The latest accusations come from former aide Lindsey Boyan, who wrote, Andrew Cuomo abused his power as governor to sexually harass me, just as he had done with so many other women.
The New York Times is reporting a second former aide to New York Governor Andrew Cuomo has come forward accusing him of sexual harassment. So Bryn, what do we know about the status of the investigation into these accusations?
Yeah, so Fred, the governor's office says it's asked the attorney general and the chief judge in the state's highest court to pick an independent private lawyer to conduct this probe to, quote, avoid even the perception of a lack of independence or interference of politics. But we're already hearing from sources and lawmakers that this is not enough. And here's the issue. They say what the governor's office is proposing doesn't allow subpoena power for the investigation, meaning they wouldn't be able to compel witnesses. They may not get their hands on certain data. So they're calling for Cuomo to make a referral to the AG's office, which would grant those powers. And the AG has been very vocal about this already too, saying she doesn't accept what the governor is proposing and that her office can completely handle this investigation on its own. It just needs that referral from the governor's office. So this.
Well, we reached out to the Governor Cuomo's office to respond to Charlotte Bennett's claims, and they directed us to the governor's apology on Wednesday, where he said he never knew at the time that he was making anyone uncomfortable. He asked people to wait for the results of the state attorney general's investigation.
Hi, everyone. I'm Diane Macedo. We're interrupting your regular programming with breaking news. The New York Attorney General has just announced the findings of an investigation into New York Governor Andrew Cuomo. Let's listen.
The independent investigation has concluded that Governor Andrew Cuomo sexually harassed multiple women and in doing so violated federal and state law. Specifically, the investigation found that Governor Andrew Cuomo sexually harassed current and former New York State employees by engaging in unwelcome and non-consensual touching and making numerous offensive comments of a suggestive and sexual nature that created a hostile work environment for women.
Bombshell announcement today, New York's Governor Andrew Cuomo revealing he will resign amid this sexual harassment scandal, heading off possible impeachment and ending his decade-long run as governor.
The sexual misconduct advocacy group Time's Up found itself in the middle of yet another sexual harassment cover-up. Recent reports allege that the company's CEO, Tina Chen, instructed the organization to stand down on publicly supporting Andrew Cuomo's accuser, Lindsey Boylan, after two people connected to Time's Up spoke with the former governor's longtime advisor. That was just the tip of the iceberg. An investigation earlier this month by New York Attorney General Letitia James found that then chairwoman of Time's Up, Roberta Kaplan, also spoke with the governor's staff about a response to Boylan's allegations, which investigators described as part of a, quote, unlawful retaliation effort. Kaplan resigned shortly after the reports surfaced. During a recent taping of The Katie Halper Show, Jack Allison pointed to the PR firm that represents the Time's Up Foundation for their role in the cover-up. Let's watch.
We're now seeing basically every Democrat who's, the last two major Democrat sex scandals have an element of, oh yeah, and also Time's Up tried to kill the story. Which, right. That's a little bit f***ing weird.
Joining us now is host of The Katie Halper Show and co-host of the Useful Idiots podcast. Katie, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, so let's talk about them kind of trying to bury these stories. Are they just acting as a Democrat operative group now that's just going after Republicans who do bad things, or what do you think is going on?
Yeah, I think that there's really embarrassing allegations here. No, more than allegations. We now know the facts, and the truth is that Time's Up was basically running interference for powerful Democratic men.
So yesterday, the leader of Time's Up, the Me Too era organization founded by Hollywood women to fight sexual harassment, she resigned. Roberta Kaplan stepped down as chair of the group's board of directors. Her resignation follows revelations that she helped advise Governor Cuomo's office in an effort to discredit at least one of his accusers. So CBS News culture and gender contributor Jodi Kantor is here to discuss. She's also a Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative reporter for the New York Times. Jodi, thank you so much for joining us.
So Time's Up was working closely with him. Nobody blames them for working with him on legislation. He was the governor. They got important measures passed thanks to his help. However, as the allegations began to come out, the leaders of Time's Up got essentially too involved in advising his team in what now is looking like a smear campaign against one of the women.
It's been almost a month since New York Governor Andrew Cuomo announced he would resign after a report by the state attorney general's office found he sexually harassed multiple women. Since then, a cascade of firings and resignations have brought down leaders of the women's movement caught in Cuomo's orbit. On Monday, Alphonso David was fired as president of the Human Rights Campaign. That follows resignations by Tina Chen, the chief executive at Time's Up, an organization focused on supporting women in the workplace, along with Roberta Kaplan at the Time's Up Legal Defense Fund and a number of the group's board members. All left after revelation that they had advised Cuomo's team on how to respond to the allegations. The news raises questions about the progress of the Me Too movement and where to go from here, nearly 4 years after the hashtag went viral in 2017. And Lynn Farley, we know that the individuals who have resigned or been fired were part of advising Governor Cuomo as he looked at how to deal with these allegations against him. What do you think all this says about where the movement is right now?
I think the movement's in trouble. I don't think we should duck that, because the same concern is happening with the Me Too movement that happened with the issue itself, and that is it's extremely easy to co-opt the people who are tasked with, bringing sexual harassment to light. Now you have a strong political figure in New York State, and he took a lot of Me Too people with him because, in fact, they had sold out their mandate.
Over the weekend, the entire Time's Up board, including celebrities like Eva Longoria and Shonda Rhimes, resigned after weeks of turmoil over the organization's advising of former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo over sexual harassment allegations. In a statement, the board acknowledged the current crisis, saying, quote, "Time's Up is ready for new leadership, and we want to move forcefully towards its new iteration."
President of the Human Rights Campaign, Alphonso David, was fired over the weekend for advising the former governor. David worked as chief counsel to Cuomo from 2015 to 2019. According to New York Attorney General Letitia James' August 3rd report, David released Cuomo accuser Lindsey Boylan's personnel files in late 2020 when asked to do so by former top Cuomo aide Melissa DeRosa. In a statement posted to Twitter, David called his ousting unjust and threatened legal action. Later, he followed up, writing, quote, "We need to end this bullying." This is just amazing. I'm so shocked to discover that all these people, who purport to be in service of progressive feminism, were covering for Cuomo, who is despicable all along. Yes, this is in my view, a much-deserved reckoning, and I find it hilarious that he wants to make this out to be a legal matter. But there is some justice in the universe, maybe, that all these people have to resign in embarrassment or be fired.
It's time's up for Time's Up. Yeah.
This organization is halting its operations, is giving the paltry amount, like $1.7 million it has left to its legal defense fund. And none of those actresses came out when this organization was imploding. Why? Because when Andrew Cuomo got accused, they sided with him. They advised him behind the scenes, and then Chen initially discouraged other Time's Up leaders from commenting publicly on the allegations being brought against him by Lindsey Boylan and others. They sided with him because he's a Democrat. You and I both know it. And it wasn't just this incident. It was when Tara Reade came out and accused Joe Biden, and she went to Time's Up, and Anita Dunn, who's running Biden's communication, was running their communication, and suddenly Time's Up didn't have the time to help Tara Reade in her quest against who? Another Democrat. They were the Believe All Women crew. They crushed Brett Kavanaugh with allegations that were laughable from people like Julie Swetnick, and they did this to themselves. And I want to hear those actresses come out and say they're sorry, and that they'll fund a new organization that gets back to mission focus of helping anyone, whether they're accusing a Democrat or a Republican who has been harassed at the office. Otherwise, they can pound sand. I wouldn't take their money, and I wouldn't have the association with them. I'm fired up about this because it had a good cause. It could have helped a lot of people, and instead, they went partisan, and that's why they imploded.
Your former Charmed co-star, Alyssa Milano, gets a lot of credit for helping Me Too go viral. So, are you proud of her?
I don't like her.
Why?
Because I think she's a lie.
Why?
Do you think I don't know these people? I'm not looking at this from the outside. I have a lot of experience. I know she's married to a CIA agent. Do the math. Who's behind Time's Up? CIA. Where do they meet? CIA. Who needs good PR? CIA. Who are part of the pimp problem? CIA.
These are very powerful people you're talking about.
They are. So am I.
I know you told your friend you're not okay. And tell me what's wrong and why you never said you felt that way. And guess you're trying to stay strong and fake a smile until I look away. But I've known you too long, it hurts to watch your blue eyes fade to gray as you fade away. As you fade away.
Yeah, I'm about to fade away, cause every time I wake up I feel like it's Monday. Something's going wrong with all the chemicals up in my brain. All of a sudden I don't look at anything the same way. Gotta build up of my thoughts sitting in an ashtray. I'm sorry that I'm so inconvenient, okay. Just let me be me and I'll stay out of your way.